8 days ago, the Jewish world marked Tisha B'Av, the day on which we remember the destruction of the first and second temples in Jerusalem and other calamities to strike the Jewish people. It's a day of fasting and mourning, mostly among traditional communities. Many progressive communities have not felt the need to observe Tisha B'Av, reasoning that the temple, the priesthood, and the sacrificial cult, as precursors to the appearance of the Messiah, restoration, and redemption, do not form part of progressive Jewish thought. However, in recent years, there has been an acknowledgement that we can still learn about and learn from this day, and it is observed more often and in various different ways. Well, since the establishment of the State of Israel in 1948, there are some, even Orthodox authorities, who believe that the festival has lost its meaning. The prophet Zechariah expressed the messianic hope that the Eternal One will return to Zion, and that, I quote, "There shall yet be old men and women in the squares of Jerusalem, and the squares of the city shall be crowded with boys and girls playing." So that prophecy, in a sense, was realized in 1948, and so some Jews believe that the second part of the prophecy, which saw a time when fast days would be observed as joyous festivals, should be fulfilled. Well, I have to tell you, it has not been my custom to fast on Tisha B'Av, but this year felt different, not only for me, but for several of my colleagues, because of what is happening in Israel. I don't need to describe to you what's happening there, but I would like to share with you some of the words with which member of Knesset Gilad Kariv of the Labour Party Avodah addressed the Israeli parliament recently. He delivered a stinging attack on Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and other ministers who are wreaking such havoc on the fabric of Israeli society and politics. Kariv begins by accusing Netanyahu, and I quote, of leading Israeli society towards the most serious crisis in its history, towards a dramatic rift that threatens our national security and our ability to maintain a diverse yet united society, of forming an alliance with the most extreme zealots in Israeli politics, for leading a campaign of incitement against entire groups in Israeli society, both directly and through your representatives who stand here on the podium to spread hatred amongst our family, for harming international relationships, and for a political culture of lies, half-truths, and fake news. He didn't spare his words. And he concludes with these words: "You, Minister of the Government and members of the coalition, are to blame for the dramatic weakening of Israeli democracy. You, Ministers of the Government and members of the coalition, are to blame for the tearing of our national fabric. You are to blame for the deterioration of Israel's international position in the free world. You are to blame for pushing the State of Israel into a bloody, binational, anti-democratic, anti-Zionist reality. You, ministers of the government and members of the coalition, are to blame for neglecting the weakest of Israeli citizens, abandoning the senior citizens, turning your back on the younger generation, and of neglecting our citizens in public housing. You don't care about anything other than the judicial coup and appointing close associates to countless positions. In the pages of the history of the Jewish people and of the State of Israel, you will be remembered as fanatics and collaborators with the destroyers of our homeland." Well, on the afternoon of Tisha B'Av, I participated in a Zoom meeting for colleagues here in Israel and in Europe to reflect on what the day means for us this year and to express our sorrow, our love for Israel, and our solidarity with the many thousands of Israelis who go out on the streets to protest the actions of their government. And I know that Rabbi Alex spoke about this last Shabbat morning. There's a very, very slight overlap, but only a very slight one. So though many of us here have gone out to the demonstrations and protests that have taken place in London, there's still a sense of helplessness and even despair. So at the Zoom meeting was Yana Marcus, the daughter of Holocaust survivors, married to a rabbi, and a teacher of religion herself. She was concerned that we were mourning Israel, although we assured her that that was not the case. And she said, it takes more than 75 years to create a working democracy. Israel is still so young in that regard. Have faith in us, she said. Don't give up on us. And I think her words, more than any other, gave the rest of us some reason to feel more positive and to have some hope for the future of Israel. These feel like very dark times over there. Rabbi Rene, who some of you will remember, used to say, Gam ze ya'avor, this too shall pass. But the question was asked, what can we do? Is there anything we can do to help that too shall pass? Well, we can make sure that we keep in touch with our families and friends in Israel and let them know that we're thinking of them and giving them our support. I know that that means a lot. In addition, the rabbis of the Talmud said that sinat chinam, groundless hatred, was one of the factors that led to the destruction of the Second Temple. And it feels as if sinat chinam is once again tearing at the heart and soul of the Jewish nation. Amazingly enough, there is a response to that in the Jewish calendar, and it comes just 6 days after Tisha B'Av, and that is Tu B'Av, which fell on Wednesday of this week. Tu B'Av is known as Chag HaAhava, the festival of love, and that is an opportunity for us to demonstrate Ahavat Chinam, groundless love. And Ahavat Chinam is not some Pollyanna-ish idea that we should just love everyone. When terrible events happen in the world and human beings act in ways that are far from noble, I think it means that we shouldn't allow ourselves to be dragged down into despair. It's a way of holding on to our hope, hatikva, that most people are decent and kind. It's a way of holding on to the belief that however bad things are now, it's not hatred that will ultimately prevail, it is love. And it demands of us that we do our best to act with kindness and compassion, with joy, with love and respect for others. In our Torah portion, Akev, Moses recalls breaking the 2 tablets that he brought down from Mount Sinai on seeing the Israelites dancing around the golden calf. What happens to those fragments of the 2 broken tablets? Well, the rabbis of the Talmud conclude that the old broken fragments were placed in the ark together with the new tablets and were carried by the Israelites throughout their years wandering in the desert. The broken tablets were as much part of their reality as the whole ones. Our ancestors experienced the catastrophe for them that was the destruction of the temple and exile from the promised land. It must have felt as if their lives were totally shattered. Nevertheless, out of that disaster, they went on to carve out the rabbinic Judaism that forms the basis of what we practice today. And so it is our prayer and our fervent hope that out of the crisis in Israel will come a better future, a future towards which we must all work, a future in which a new approach in Israel will be carved out by people working together in kind, wise, meaningful, and loving ways. Rav Kook, who was the first Ashkenazi chief rabbi of British Mandatory Palestine, once wrote, "If we were destroyed and the world with us due to baseless hatred, then we shall rebuild ourselves and the world with baseless love. Ahavat Chinam. Kein Yehi Ratzon. May this be God's will. Amen."